How do you run an effective team meeting in your podiatry practice? G'day there, John O'Heath from Podiatry Hive, and in this video I'm going to show you how we use a tool called Asana, which is actually a project management tool to run effective team communication in your practice. So what you're looking at here is the desktop version of the Asana app, but there is equally a native app for your mobile phone or for your tablet, and they work really well as well. But for this, I'll just walk you through using the desktop app. If you've been coaching with us or if you're in our mastermind program, you'd be really familiar with how we use Asana to run our coach-client relationships. But for the purpose of this video, we're going to be looking at a couple of these different projects, the quarterly planning project, but mainly the team communications project down here, because what I've got in here is two types of meetings, the executive weekly tactical meeting and the strategic planning meeting. And it's the agenda of the weekly tactical meeting that I really want to go through in a little bit more detail. So just from a purely logistical point of view, you can see that this meeting, if I click here, repeats weekly at 8 o'clock on a Monday. And so as soon as I tick that off, a new one will be created with the same agenda. And that's actually really handy for keeping track of where you're up to and having a bit of leverage for recording the minutes and recording the actions. So we call this an executive weekly tactical. In our business, we have 4 people attending, but this may just be you and the practice manager or you and one of the front of house people. And it's a meeting that should really take under an hour to get through. The agenda has 2 parts really. So the first part here is timed, and it just follows this 5-part structure. The second part is where you actually solve any of the problems that come up in part 1. And it's really key that you don't get bogged down in part 1 with trying to solve problems that are going to take a long time. Now at the start, a good news story doesn't necessarily have to be about the business. It could be something that's happening in your personal life, with your family, whatever, a milestone. The key with that section is that it's just an icebreaker to get you talking. And then we get into the nitty-gritty of what's actually happening in the business. The scorecard's really essential. You really need to know your numbers so that you can make those informed decisions about what to do in your practice to move you forward. Now, obviously, you need the lag measures, the measures that tell you where you've been, how much income you've made, the expenses that are going out. But it's also really important to have on your scorecard some of the lead measures. Those are the things that are going to predict the future performance of your practice. And the 2 biggest ones that you must know are your percentage rebooking rate and the number of report letters that are written back to your professional referrers. Now, if there's something that comes up, of course, in the scorecard, so that maybe you're going to have a deficit for the month, then that doesn't get solved right now. Put it down in this parking lot down the bottom here so that you can solve it in the second part of the agenda. The rock review is the next section. If you've listened to any Stephen Covey, then you'll be really familiar with the concept of putting in the big rocks first. This is actually referring to what we call the 90-day actions. Those are the kind of the bigger types of projects. And I would advise, if you're using Asana, that you put your 90-day plan into a project in Asana as well. Now over here on the left, you can see it's all actually quite handy when you're running a meeting to be able to go back and just check in with everybody on what's happening in your 90-day plan. So for those of you who are coaching clients, you'd be very familiar with the way that we organize our stuff into leadership, financial, sales and marketing systems and team. Really, this part of the agenda is just to check in on how all of these things are actually going, to make sure that you are tracking forwards. Again, if there's something that's not done that's really obvious, then put that down into the issues that you need to solve. The runway or 3 to thrive. What we do in our business is we actually do this every week and create some action items. If you're in part of our Black Belt Mastermind, you'd be really familiar with the concept of the 3 to thrive. It's really just 1 or 2 big things, or maybe 3 things that you're going to do to move the practice forward. So what we actually do in our business is to actually go back and look at what were the action items for the previous week. So let's have a look. In this case, you can see that there was a new A-frame sign for the footpath, which has not been done, but the sonar training with the team has been done. So what I would do in Asana would just be, as we're going through the meeting, to move that task across into the action items for the next week. And I won't actually try and solve that right now, but the A-frame would then go down into the parking lot for the problems to solve. That's really just done or not done, no justification then. And finally, at the end of the agenda, you get to the customer employee headlines. Maybe there's something like maternity leave for pod or something like that, and you can put that down as an action. So I've gone through that. Hopefully at that part one of the agenda, you've done it in 20 to 25 minutes. The idea of this second part of the agenda is to move these issues off and have specific action items. So obviously the A-frame was still there from last time. Work out whether or not there's a problem with who's doing it, or if it's a supplier problem, whether it needs the date to be adjusted or if the person to be reassigned, whatever it is, and get that out of the parking lot. Deficit for the month, maybe you need to look at getting a loan facility with the bank. Key thing is put a date in and also assign it to a particular person to have responsibility. That may just be you, but that will give you a list of tasks that you need. Remove that from the parking lot, and then maternity leave, maybe that has another action, which is advertise for a new pod. Again, assign that and give it a date as well. You can leave that out of the parking lot of the issues, and then you've got 3 to thrive for next week. And so it goes on. And as you can see, as you go on, you can then get a feeling for whether or not you've been ticking tasks off on a weekly basis. So while this is actually a task management tool, I hope you can see that you can use it for the broader team communications, and that it can be an effective tool as well for running those meetings. So I hope you found that Asana tool useful for running your team meetings, and that agenda particularly. For people who are already Podiatry Hive members, we have a complete communication plans template inside the document library, and there's an extended training on how to run all of your team communication inside the members area. If you're not already a Podiatry Hive member, go and check out podiatryhive.com for more details.